Hi, and welcome to this session. My name is Tiago, and I like to start by saying that I don't like this title at all. It wasn't that in the beginning, but then as time went by, and when it was already too late to change it, um, it just felt wrong, It just felt too much, and I really want this to resonate with everyone. So just bear with me, okay? I will try to convey my experience and a bunch of things that I've learned during this session. So I hope you enjoyed. And I'm going to start, as I often do, with a story. This story is about having a game and having it blow in your face. So, in what seems like a couple of lifetimes ago, um, I left my job on a big publisher to work on an indie title. The proverbial three persons in a bedroom, but it was a living room. And again, this is a horror story because, well, quite often game development is horror disguised as entertainment. If you've been long enough in the industry, you'll probably resonate with this, and you've heard plenty of similar stories uh, from both probably yourself or some of your colleagues and friends. So we had just started this journey of developing this game, and we got invited to showcase it at EGX in London. And after a while, when the show started and we were presenting, started to notice some crashes. Um, and the crashes were happening all the time, to the point where we knew we had a memory leak and we had to do something about it. So you can imagine that someone like myself, as the only engineer in the project back then, um, kind of panicked and trying to figure out how could this have happened and what can be done. So after a few very unhappy debugging sessions, uh, I was able to pinpoint the problem. And the problem was a mixture of, well, systems shouldn't behave like this, to me assuming that systems should behave in a certain way. So, kind of found a problem, added a quick fix for it, and apparently it was something that a lot of people um, liked. That well, I got asked to go to one of those Microsoft share sessions and present it to to a wider audience. It was quite fun doing it. Quite fun because it was solved and we were no longer at EGX. But this served as a lesson to me, and I really hope that a lot of people also learn by my mistake that you should never assume. And that's why it's very crucial to understand systems and understand what you're doing when you're developing games or any kind of programs in software engineering. But let's learn a bit about me. So I'm typical child of the 70s who was fortunate enough to have a dad that was very into electronics and ham radio. So I grew up assembling things, assembling radios. On weekends, we would, I don't know, place antennas, try to reach further and hack our ways into whatever we could using electricity, airwaves, and circuit boards. And I was also fortunate enough to have a computer in the early 80s. And having this specific computer in Europe meant you'd have no games to exchange with your friends because no one would have a similar computer. It was quite rare, especially in Portugal, where I was born. Nowadays, I only know one other person who had one, but simply there was nobody, which led me to, since I couldn't afford to buy new games, I learned how to make them. So I was with my dad on weekends, and during the weekdays, I'd write code in a piece of paper so that on weekends, when I was with my dad, I tried to put it working. And I guess the rest is history. This is how my fascination with engineering came to be, and kind of led me to where I am right now. So yeah, I started programming a while back, and this integer thing is quite a joke that I had with a friend, because we've been through those conversations in the 90s where people said, "Oh, ints, you're crazy. You're gonna run out of memory soon." Whereas now, like, people know better than I. I've been working in engineering for a while. I've done some cybersec, and AI that I will revisit a few times in this presentation was something that was and still is very special to me. And again, being someone who wasn't working in engineering in the 70s, I like to joke and say that, in early 2000s, I got paid to program in Lisp, which is what makes me either ancient or lucky, or both. I do a bunch of different stuff for my own sake. And right now, I'm the CTO at Iliad. So even though we're quite flying under the radar at this moment, we're trying to solve AAA quality streaming. We're exploring mostly for XR platforms, and our first vertical is ad tech. But previous to this, as you can see from the list, I've had some cool access, and I always try to find opportunities to work on AI and ML plus space industries whenever I can. It's still haven't found anything interesting that I could help, but it's a huge passion of mine. And these are just this is a college of some titles that I've worked on. You may recognize a few. I've worked on games that nobody played, and I've worked in games that a lot of people have played. By the names here. And as a side projects right now, well, as I've said, last year I was in this really cool initiative called Machine Learning for Space, where we were trying to solve problems using AI and machine learning, in particular for problems that have to do with, for instance, real-time collision detection and evasion maneuvers for satellites. So that's something that I've grown quite fond of. I also working on this system dynamic architecture generator. So if you want to build architecture in a game, this is based on something that I did in the past and that I really want to pursue. I really find it a passion of mine, architecture. I have friends who were architects and are now engineers, and I guess I'm the opposite. And also this visual planner thing. This kind of started as an invitation to write a book chapter that turned out to be motivation for me to write a system for agent behavior. But let's go back to the hype. So current engineering hype. I mean, it's nothing new, right? We've been here plenty of times. I like to think the modern engineering era that's starting on around World War II time. Because back then, there was a huge need to optimize everything from transport to materials to pretty much everything. I mean, we have a full field coming out of mathematics called operations research. It came out of this need. And the tech that we're using nowadays, as an example, are things that have always been here. And articles like this that I was fortunate enough to be shown speaks of things that, well, we're not quite there yet. But in the 50s, someone published this text of things that nowadays we still don't know how and when, but we know that sooner or later this will happen, right? And if we go about the tech that is mentioned there, so that the practical application of the technology that is being mentioned here, this goes even way back. Like the perceptron was the concept behind it's way further behind. It's from the early 40s. So what we are seeing right now with the current AI hype, I mean, it's been here for a long time. Naturally, there have been some more recent developments that have been catalysts to the innovation that we're seeing. But it's always been here. And when it started, for me, the second time I fell in love with engineering was thanks to AI. I always like to present John McCarthy because, I mean, look at his hair. It's amazing. AI was something that I was drawn to way before it was trendy, to the point of where, while I was in college, that was the field that I pursued. Back then, we had to understand the systems. We had to understand the math. We had to understand what we were doing a lot more because we didn't have many tools at our disposal. And the symbolic part, the symbolic AI, kind of shaped the way how I think about engineering systems with clarity and structure. And that's a mindset that matters for me, enough for me to talk about it. And in the early 2000s, I was working on a AI research lab. And this was my springboard into games because for those of you who don't know what this is called RoboCop Rescue Simulation. So myself and some others, we joined forces to create agents that would go about in disaster scenarios and help people, basically, either putting out fires or rescuing people to hospitals or clearing roads. So those were the kind of agents that we built, autonomous agents, and then we would just throw them in the simulation and see how they perform. And this was a competition. We were lucky back then to go to the finals, and that kind of led me to write my first published paper on the subject. And then I thought, okay, I had some previous experience building games, but they felt more amateur compared to what I was doing here. So I thought, okay, now is the time for me to move 100% into game development. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try to get my hands on the best game engine that I can afford, aka open source, which is when Quake 2 was available. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to leverage upon the knowledge that I got from RoboCop and try to see if I can make something out of it and go a bit beyond the scope that I had done before. And that's how the project that I started working then um, came to fruition. So it was kind of a mixture of between machine vision and reasoning and behavior and adaptation of synthetic agents on complex 3D environments. The machine vision was something that I wasn't that keen on exploring, so I was fortunate enough to find this paper and these people that worked on that part. So allowing agents to see on Quake. So I used this to as a basis for my behavior layer that then worked on top of the Quake 2 engine. You can imagine this made quite a story when I met this guy. And that's basically how I started in games. But now let's move to the problem that we are focusing here. I like to think that we have grown in our metaphors. We have grown on the abstraction of our systems to a point where we are having a lot of problems. And the most common example that I usually hand out on this is drawing a pixel. Again, as I've been saying, when I started and when a bunch of people around my age started, we had a bunch of tools that were very limited. And although they were helping us, it still felt like the old days of navigating without GPS. You just had a map and a compass. So when you think about being able to put a pixel on the screen, that's quite complex nowadays, but it didn't used to be. So these are actual screenshots that I did recently, just for illustrating this idea. This is from a ZX Spectrum 48K. It's an emulator because mine isn't working. But you'd power your system. You'd write one line of code, you'd run it, and you had a pixel on the screen. Nowadays, if you want to do the same thing, it's gonna cost you a lot of time and patience if you have no idea how to do it. But I try to find the best illustration of how to do it. I mean, you can do it any other way. I'm pretty sure people are gonna be like, "Oh yeah, but you could do it this other way." Yeah, for sure. I just found this to be one that could be easily understood by everyone, whether people watching this are engineers or not. So this was quite what I found to be a simple-ish example of how to put a pixel on the screen, and this is using a window. I mean, we could do it full screen, but then this would require, like, I don't know, a few additional lines of code, and this way I can have it somewhat readable, and it still illustrates the concept. So the pixel is here. I added the arrow for better visualization. But basically, you have to install, if you get a computer nowadays, PC, you have to install an OS, you have to install Python, you have to install a package manager, you have to install an abstraction for dealing with the OS in terms of putting things on the screen. You have to run a piece of code. Well, you need to write it down somewhere. Well, fortunately, you probably have a notepad with your OS. You have to write the code, run the code, and then you'll see the pixel. You can see just by this how many layers we just added, right? I think it's just too many things, and you really need to know how to do it to be performant. I wouldn't say this is the most performing way of doing it, far from it. So although it solves a quick problem, it doesn't really solve the actual problem of us having created so much abstraction that we've made things harder in the process. So, granted, I mean, I know that the layers of abstraction that we have nowadays have also enabled and empowered a lot more people to do things. But quite often, we may be distracted by the fog that those layers bring to development. The trade offs. So we have more power, but potentially less understanding of the systems, as everything seems to be built upon things that are built upon things and built upon things. And sometimes people are just lazy, like the left pad issue that you can Google if you don't know about it. Like TLDR version, people don't like to write padding or simple software from scratch, so they use packages. And then one day, one developer decided to remove their package from npm, and then the internet broke. And that's a huge concern for us, well, as a species, but as users. That's something as simple as that could be the cause of a huge problem. And you also have the problem that if people don't have the real need to optimize or customize, you may end up with having tons of games that just look the same. And if you go really, really dark on this, yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of how vibe coding is presented nowadays. I think it can be a very powerful tool in the right hands, but people should have the notion of the responsibility they have when they're given so much power. Feels like something out of a movie. But it could be a problem because it introduces opacity. With vibe coding is like, well, it works. Don't touch it until it doesn't work. And then there's no vibe debugging that can potentially help you. That and the fact that quite often people build things without having the notion of architecture and technical stack, and then hire other folks to extend what they have built, when in fact they're building something on top of very unstable foundations. I've heard plenty of horror stories about this. Things like C-levels coming up with some code over some vibe code binge in the weekend, and then on Monday having people, hey, I've pushed this to production, now fix it as it's not working. So you can imagine these are not made up. These are things that are happening right now. So I guess it comes down to us to manage up and raise the awareness that responsibility is very important, and being mindful about the impact of one's actions is so crucial right now. Which leads me to, where do we go? Where do we go from now? How do we prevent this? So these are just some topics that I came up here. So we need to be more transparent when it comes down to engineering. Our tools should teach, right? They should not hide what we're doing. One should be able to learn and see exactly what's going under the hood. What's lying under the hood shouldn't be something gated. We should always be very keen to help others, to share more, to publish more things. We wouldn't be where we are if that culture, the hacking culture, the open source culture hadn't existed before. So it's very important to keep that flame alive. It's also very important to people just have plenty of other stuff to do for fun, because we should be having fun while we're doing this. We should be breaking stuff as well. It's like what I usually say as a manifesto is like, build what you understand, break what you don't, and teach what you've learned. And if we do that, we'll have less and less walled gardens, and we'll all be able to move forward with more information. We're not clearing the fog overnight, but we can definitely teach others how to better read the map. And we should be prepared for when things blow on our faces. We should be there. We should help. We should trace. We should learn and make things work. Anything can fail, but knowing how things work, that's just something we need to do. And it's also up to us to try and mentor others. If you've been around long enough, you've got plenty of battle scars, right? And you should not hide them. You should show them and display them as a badge of honor, because someone out there is about to make those same mistakes, or have already been, and you can help them. We need to be more focused on systems thinking. So like everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people have been so much into Unity or Unreal that I often see cases where more junior folks, they just don't know how to create a hello world on a console. So if you remove their common way of doing things, aka off-the-shelf engine, they feel lost. And also, being very specific about the things that we do and the impact that those same things have is very important. Like going to a profile, going to tools like RenderDoc. I mean, if you really want to learn how things work, create your own engine. Learn how to abstract and decoupling systems so that you have your game logic working in one side and all the OS and platform code is separate. We used to do that all the time when we didn't have game engines. And now that has been somewhat lost, and nowadays we have sometimes problems that derive from the fact that using abstraction to our favor is something that it's not done often enough. And remember, we're meant to be engineers, not users. So here are some also some thoughts on hard and soft skills. So communication is very, very, very important. And again, it's not about the volume, but quality and clarity. We're not saying that everyone should be like native communicators, but you should be able to communicate problems and issues and concerns with quality and clarity. You should be able to find your crew, because not every team will be the perfect team for you. And it's gonna go wrong at some point. It's only normal, because we're all humans. We're just trying to find our spot, and sometimes we make the wrong choice. It's just fine. We should continuously embrace learning, because especially considering the state of things in the games industry. My only friends who are struggling are in engineering, obviously. I'm not going to talk about other areas, but are the ones that have been stagnating in time. They haven't been keeping up with many new developments, and that has become a problem for them. I'm not saying that this is like a solution for everything, but it will definitely increase your chances of landing a job. I've always had people who are afraid in my teams who are afraid of asking questions because they thought, oh, I'm gonna look dumb if I ask questions. No, never, never think that way. I know it's hard sometimes, especially when you're in the middle of a team that they're way too much senior compared to you. But asking questions is crucial because it shows that you're open to learning, and you will probably save your teams a lot of valuable time if you ask for help. Finding a mentor is also very important. I mean, it's sometimes hard to find someone who will be willing and has the time to mentor you, but um, it's important and it helps a lot. And be patient. I mean, I struggle a lot with patience, um, but things don't happen overnight, and sometimes it's hard to deal with the time that things take to develop. But that doesn't mean that they won't happen. It just means that we need to be more patient. And we should always be enjoying what we're doing and taking good care of ourselves. Me and a ton of people have suffered through burnouts and a lot of problems because at some point we didn't define strong barriers. So always make sure that you take good care of yourself and ask for help when needed. And again, if I could just pick one thing to leave from this session was break, learn, repeat. And don't just fix it for fixing sake, and don't just go Google and copy something from Stack Overflow or an LLM. Just trace it, learn about it, because you'll rise a better person from that experience. We're not here just to ship, you know. We're here to shape something meaningful. Something people will play, remember, and maybe learn from. So build with eyes open, break things, but break them on purpose. And above all, don't vibe code your way into LiveOps nightmare. Thanks for listening.